Newton's Three Laws is an extensive set of materials designed to assist in the teaching of the physics of dynamics, including forces and Newton's three laws. These materials include student handouts, objectives, simulation software, PowerPoint presentations, experiments, tests, and associated answer keys in Word and PDF formats. To start, you open the main menu, which is shown here, where you can access all of these materials. That's why it's called Click and Teach. Let's take a look at each of these materials. First of all, you can click on the Objectives button, and you can see that for each of the lessons and for the software, there is a Word or PDF document which you can open up, and that will include a set of objectives for you to start the lesson. Click on the Quit button to go back to the main menu. There is a set of handouts. You can see 29 pages. If you wanted to hand out the entire packet to your students, you can see that there's a study guide to start off. And there are questions. There are sets of information, worksheets, fill-in sheets for the lecture. There's a set of inertia demos as one example, homework, etc. So essentially, it's the entire unit on Newton's three laws in one package. If you don't want to use all the handouts in one big package, you can also access each of those pages, each portion of the handouts one at a time by clicking on the Word or PDF buttons here. Study guide is one of the more important sheets because it takes you through the lessons sort of one at a time, shows you exactly which pages go along with each of the lessons as far as questions, in-class worksheets, homework worksheets, the quizzes, the various experiments, and so on. They're all laid down as part of the study guide. Also, there is an included equation sheet, which allows the students to have all of the equations that they might use. This would be under forces, so there's not a whole bunch of them, but this is basically an equation sheet for an entire algebra-based physics course. Next, let's take a look at the PowerPoint presentations. You can see that there is a PowerPoint that goes along with the original discussion on forces. There's a comic book on the history of forces. There's also an entire sequence on data analysis, how to come up with an equation from a set of data without graphing. So let's take a look at this PowerPoint as one example. You can see here's the explanation of what data analysis is and how it works. Talks about running more than one experiment because you have more than two variables that you need to deal with, which you will see when we get to the experiments. Talks about the shapes of the curves and what kind of relationships that they represent. Goes through the entire procedure with examples until it finally comes down to an included Excel spreadsheet that will allow students to take a lab or experimental data and pump out or determine an equation from that data. Again, click the Quick button to go back to the main menu. There are a number of experiments. Here's the one on data analysis, which I would suggest you do before you go to Newton's second law. and there's also an experiment on friction. So let's take a look at the Newton's second law. Excuse me, that's the objectives. Let's take a look at the lab handout for Newton's second law experiment. You can see that has an introduction, gives some directions. It provides data tables for gathering the data, which you don't necessarily have to provide. And it breaks the lab down into parts for each partner to work on and turn in separately while working together on the entire experiment. Again, click on the Quit button to go back to the main menu. Let's take a look. There's also a number of pieces of software. There's some very simple experiments, like here is the very typical example for Newton's first law, and you can either choose friction or no friction. If there's no friction, you can see or show the students that you can essentially move this out of here. It doesn't matter how fast you pull it. While if there's friction and you try to pull it, the friction will cause the ball to move along, and in order to get it to get out of the way, you have to pull it very quickly. So that's just a very simple little demonstration. There's some more complicated pieces of software. Here's the rocket demo, where students are asked to select some variables. You can set the time or not set the time. Just start the rocket, and you can give the students some variables. You can ask students to calculate out the variables. You can illustrate the fact that if the rocket mass is greater, the force of the weight of the rocket down is greater than the thrust of the rocket. Of course, the rocket will not accelerate upwards. So there's lots of various demonstrations that you can use with this software. There is a final simulation where the fuel is changing. So as the rocket accelerates upward, it's actually changing its mass, and that leads to some interesting discussion. There's a planet rocket game where students have to start their rocket, again by giving it some thrust, and then they need to use the data provided to figure out exactly which planet the rocket must have been launched from. There's a friction presentation, which will go through all of the friction factors one by one, give examples, and explain how those friction factors work. So there's lots of materials for you to use with your class during this unit. Finally, there's a set of tests. There's quizzes on forces. There's quizzes on Newton's second law. There's a quiz on friction. All of the quizzes, again, come in Word and PDF format, some of which are just simple. This is a matching question quiz. All of the quizzes come with answer keys. So for the friction, for instance, you can see here's the answer key to both some multiple choice questions and to the problems. So at the end of giving the test, when you want to go over it, all you need to do is come to this screen, click on the answer key, and the answer key will pop up for you to use. Assuming that you want some more possible suggestions, you can click on the instructor's notes. This is not meant to tell you what to do, but just give you some suggestions, exactly step by step how I might go through myself and use the various materials. Gives you some screenshots of the software and shows you how to sequence the material. So that pretty much sums up the Newton's Three Laws Click and Teach series. This is one of 4 at this particular time. There's also one on graphing and data analysis. There's one on motion graphing, and there's also one on motion equations. So check these out by going to the Multimedia site on Teachers Pay Teachers. So if you would like to get a copy of Click and Teach Newton's 3 Laws, you can get it at Teachers Pay Teachers. You can see the URL at the bottom of the screen. We'll do another video shortly on the other Click and Teach units.